Hi, my name is Christina and Stephany.
And I'm Stephany Settlemeyer from SLPs of Color.
And we're here with Lucia Lainez, interviewing her today about her experience as a speech-language pathologist. So we got to meet, you told us that your mom does social work for GRC. Did you grow up here in San Francisco?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in the city, and I was a Catholic schoolgirl. So I went to Holy Family Day at Home over on across the street from Mission Dolores for preschool. Went to St. Paul's, which is right over here on Church. And it's actually a few blocks away from where I live now. And then I went to St. Ignatius, and those are all really interesting experiences. Like St. Paul's for me was, back in the day, was like very diverse, very, very diverse. And especially in Noe Valley, as we've been talking, as we know, like gentrification in San Francisco is very, very real. And way back when, there was a lot more families of color, a lot more socioeconomic. Yes, absolutely. Like socioeconomic diversity, and that was huge. That felt so. It felt that was my comfort zone, and so even shifting from that space to St. Ignatius, which is a very prestigious high school in San Francisco, I didn't see that many people of color that I could really resonate with, but the few that were there. We instantly bonded and we instantly clicked.
Can you share with us a little bit about what your college experience was like?
Yeah, so my college experience was a little bit different. So I first started as I got a soccer scholarship. And
cool.
I played, yeah.
I had no idea.
So I got a full ride to Hawaii Pacific University, and so I moved to Hawaii, and I had so much fun. I was absolutely terrified of being on my own. I was the first,
That's a really big difference from like San Francisco. Like, yeah, there's a Polynesian culture here and things like that, but Hawaii, that's like a whole different pace.
That was a whole other level of like, oh my God. I always wanted to, like, in high school, I thought, oh, I want to study abroad, but I was like, such a, mediosa. I was so scared that, like, I was like, well, let me stay within the United States, but still have, like, a different cultural experience, and then still be, like, in a city, so in any case, I could, navigate something like that. And so I played soccer there, and that was really interesting. I had no support, like family support, but I had immediately the support of my soccer teammates, which was great. And then I met this guy, and I got pregnant. And so that's my son's father, Carlos, and so that was definitely unexpected. And my 18-year-old self at the time thought, oh yeah, no problem, I can just figure this out, and we'll be that couple, and then life happens, and so I ended up having to really just kind of retract my scholarship, and so come back to San Francisco, and to be really with my family, who I knew 100% was going to give me the support, really the emotional support that I needed. I was clueless about the financial support that was going to be that I was going to need in order to raise a young child. But as soon as I came back, I knew immediately that I had to study child development. So I went to Skyline College. I was taking night classes. I took like my first semester. I was in my second trimester, and I took 21 units. They were all night classes, Saturday classes, and then in the morning time I was working as through the Head Start program as a preschool teacher. And so that was a huge eye-opener. For me, that's what really catapulted like my love and my passion for child development, especially the younger ages, because I had to prepare for my son like immediately. And so I knew instinctively that that providing, like, I learned best in a school setting. So that's when I was like, perfect, child development. Let me, not just a book, but like, let's talk about it. Let's do labs and everything. And so then I went to Skyline College, and right when I was working as a Head Start teacher, a speech therapist came, and she's like, I need some support with the bilingual students. Can you help translate for me? And I said, sure. And, I was really intrigued what she was doing. And she's like, you might want to consider when you're transferring to get into the communicative disorders program. And I was like, huh. And so I talked to my mom, who has been a social worker for, since before I was born, working with people with disabilities. I thought I wanted to get into the child and adolescent development over at San Francisco State. And she's like, Lucia, she's like, you had speech therapy when you were little. I said, oh, really? And like, totally clueless. She's like, you had chronic ear infections. You were definitely language delayed. You were hearing impaired. That impacted. You got tubes in your ears, and the tonsils removed. And once that was resolved, then that's when you started speaking. And so I was able to. That was by 2, and receiving speech therapy, growing up bilingual, and yeah. So she's like, it's worked. It worked for you. She's like, you might want to consider it. I had my son during the spring semester, and so come the following fall, 2002, I started San Francisco State, and luckily, I was immediately able to go into the communicative disorders program. So my son was 7 months old at that time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that was just my job. Like, that was just what, like, I was 19. That was my job, to go to work, to go to school, which was my work, or prepping for work, and then be a mom. And sometimes I nannied, sometimes I was early interventionist, having needing flexibility in order to navigate things. I was living with my mom at the time, which I was so, so grateful for. She's provided really amazing unconditional support, and she loves being a grandma, and we would just kind of figure it out in between my schedule and her schedule, and then, her dad, my son's dad's schedule. Yeah, I just, also one of the things that I wanted to make sure that, I mentioned to you guys is that from the get-go, like, I knew as soon as I got pregnant, like, I knew I was going to be a teen mom, and with the teen mom stereotypes come all this baggage from everybody else, other than me. I was like, I'll be damned if I fit into anyone else's stereotype, and, someone else to make the judgment of, like, who I was, or, who they presumed I was, how I navigated my own life. So that was kind of my driving force to really prove everybody else. Myself, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll, of course, I'll figure it out, but to prove to everybody else initially that, like, no, this can be done, yeah, that was really important to me. But again, like, I cannot stress enough the importance of the support, the emotional support. And even since then, valuing that's something that I've really instilled in my parenting, the social emotional development, and really making sure that my kid, who's now 17 and a half, going to, is a senior, and looking through his college process, I want to make sure that he feels heard, he feels honored, and he feels like he has space in every single room, every single area that he enters, that he chooses to enter. I graduated in 2004, and then I was able to immediately start the graduate program from 2004 to 2006. And it was really interesting. I had a really, I was considering for grad school applying to, or actually I did apply to San Jose State, but at that time, because because they had that bilingual emphasis, and I was really getting into bilingual, not just education, but bilingual language development, and talking about stereotypes, and debunking myths about bilingualism. I wanted to make sure that I had a good foundation. Unfortunately, San Jose State wasn't. There was something going on with their accreditation at that time. So, and luckily, I just was able to get into San Francisco State. So that was a godsend. There, I kind of dived in. I dove into to different programs, including the AAC credential specifically for early intervention, which was great because I was also applying. I was also going to school. No, I was also like working as an early interventionist, and so through Easter Seals. And it's funny because like at some point, like talking to older therapists, like, oh, everyone's worked at Easter Seals at some point. So I was an early interventionist, and it was nice that I could work and apply what I was doing at school to these kids that were delayed, and then I was able to get a taste of home visits, which is a whole other ball game. Yeah, that was really interesting. And then I also during the graduate program, I took advantage of a study abroad program or a situation where. Did you guys have Nancy Robinson?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love her. She was my inspiration.
Oh, okay.
Definitely. Like she was my inspiration 100%, and she was really my biggest support. She was able to give me during the child development class or language development class. I brought Nino in, my son, to just be able to come into the class, and he was less than a year old, and we're like, let's learn from your kid.
Yeah.
And it was great. I think he was really shy at that time, but we were just trying to help stimulate language, live language, and then just kind of decode it, or just assess and analyze where he's at developmentally. So she was a great support in class and outside of class, and she also led about 4 or 5 students, graduate students, to American Samoa. Do you guys still have that program, or did they?
No, I remember she had a program where, where were they from? The Netherlands, maybe? Lund University. She was trying to do like almost like an exchange program. So some students from their university came and like observed and visited our class. And I don't know if any SF State people went there. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I say definitely, students, please take advantage of any opportunities that your programs can offer like that, because that was huge. At that time, she took a group to American Samoa, and so it's a U.S. territory, but it has, just like Puerto Rico, but it has a lot of restrictions in terms of access because of its status. And I remember really clearly that there was this one speech pathologist, and of course there's a lot of high turnover, and so she was there. And she needed help because it was just one speech therapist for the entire island. And she was in the schools, and we created, our goal for those 2 weeks was to just provide assessments, and also to be able to provide some type of parent training. As we know, one, you got to consider the cultural aspects. You have to, I think we had a picture of a seal, and we had the word seal in Samoan. But they're like, what the hell is this? We've never seen a seal. We're like, oh my God, like that's us. We know seal, because we're like, of course, it's in our ocean.
The bay.
But they're like, we don't know what this is. So that was really interesting. Yeah, and having that cultural exchange, and then also that was really important for my growth professionally, having a taste of like being demonstrating cultural humility with a culture that I had no idea about, but they were very loving and just really honoring, and you know, there were certain levels of respect that you had to show, and you had to learn really quick. And it's more than just reading a book. It's being a great observer. It's recognizing, it's not taking the lead. I think a lot of times as Americans, we make the presumptions that, like, oh yeah, you know, it's this is our norm, you know, so it must be everybody else's norm, but that's not. Yeah, no way.
Well, so tell us a little bit about work. So after those great experiences you had at SF State,
Yeah,
you graduated.
I graduated, and then so I had to do my clinical fellowship, and my son was 4, and I said, I need a change of pace. I had just broken up with a boyfriend, and my son's dad and I were not together. I was like, I need to move, and so I moved back to Hawaii. Maui is cool. Maui is really cool because, well, for a lot of different reasons. The beach was our playground, my son's playground, and so I'd pick him up at his little Montessori preschool that I found, and we'd just go straight to the beach, and so we saw the sunsets all the time and everything, but I really, really missed my family. It was a huge eye-opener of really finally feeling like, wow, I'm a single parent, and I don't have as much support, even though financially I can, I'm making money. that wasn't the whole picture. And so that's what brought us back to the Bay Area, and I've been in San Francisco ever since. So that was in 2007. So I've been back since for 12 years now.
Right. So as a person of color in the field, what are some things that you notice that have impacted you, whether they're positive or negative experiences?
So I want to say that in around maybe 2007, 8, 9, definitely 2009, the state of California, the Department of Developmental Services, DDS, put out a mandated really protocol that any services from birth to 3, that the early start services had to be in a natural environment. And that really created a community that of SLPs, existing SLPs, that really, like, everyone was up in arms with it. Not everyone, half of the people were up in arms. Half of the people were up in arms specifically with, those were the people that already had an established clinic, and a lot of times they were providing services to a certain type of family, like a socioeconomic class, you know, upper middle class families. And to be honest, a lot of the SLPs that pushed back were white. And so I presented on a panel way back when, talking about how to access the natural environment. And there were a lot of SLPs that were there that were challenging them. And I've experienced, at that time I already experienced like an outpatient clinic setting. I also experienced home visits. And for me, it was not a big deal. You know, it just really wasn't. A lot of times I understand the drive time. I understand sometimes the no-shows. I understand
unexpected conditions that you may be
walking
into.
Absolutely. But it's also, you know, our duty to really question ourselves, like, as SLPs, like, okay, this is part of a factor of this client's of this little child's life. You know, how are you going to create a new opportunity to help stimulate language, basically, or to help stimulate, you know, gross motor movement, or, you know, anything that was specifically providing a service for a child birth to 3. I also noticed that a lot of families did not want to, or excuse me, a lot of SLPs did not want to go into those homes. And they just didn't. They didn't want to go to the projects. They didn't, the housing projects. They didn't want to go into the Tenderloin. They didn't want to go into low SES communities for whatever reason. And I was really disappointed. You know, I felt like that was more of a, that was a big bias in that community, in the community at that time. There were a few SLPs that were creative, which was great, and me being one of them. So what did I do? Okay, well, if a house is not available, because sometimes people don't want you to come into the house, what do? You take them out to, again, out to the community, out to the library, out to the, you know, the park. I started doing aquatic therapy, which is amazing. You know, go take a walk, even if it's around the block, and we can do toddler speed, but we can show and demonstrate and model for the parents who really need that support, and you really need to treat them as a dyad, that, you know, I'm doing this once or twice a week, but you should be doing this, you know, the other 23 hours of the day, and showing them really unique and creative ways to do it. So I think that's something, you know, the natural environment was a challenge for the community to kind of to shift, the SLP community to shift, and just also the early start community. But you know, now I really dedicate my, like I mentioned before, only Spanish speaking clients or the babies that need the support. I figure there's a lot of there's been a lot of changes in San Francisco these days, and one of the populations that has really is in really true need of support is the undocumented Spanish-speaking families, and also the families that are still living in the SES communities, because guess what? We still have poor people, we still have working class people, we still have people that, you know, need our support, and that's really the only way that you're going to find some, you know, important carryover, not just to, you know, your specific client, but eventually, you know, it's reflected in, you know, in how the parents are parenting their other kids too. So yeah. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, since now I'm back in a outpatient clinic, and I'm really removed from, you know, from the natural environment, is how can we create ideas and solutions for that parent, that carryover? So whether it's creating like a bi-monthly parent support group, or parent training, or something like that, that I really feel like is optional, you know, but it's there and it's available. And even thinking about, like, especially with the older kids, how do we create that community within ourselves? How do we continue to honor ourselves? I know you're in the preschool setting, and so that's a little bit different, and you're just, you know, there's a lot going on there. But even the 4th and 5th graders that you're working with right now, even being like, oh, how do we start creating, like, the idea of, like, you know, personal identity, and really valuing what, you know, not just like what cultures are we coming from, but what are our family dynamics like. That's one of the things that I really made sure that when I was raising my son, was that I wanted to make sure that he felt like, yeah, you have my house, you have your dad's house, and you have your grandma's house, you know, and every single house has a house filled with people that love you, and that is your normal, and don't let anybody else think, you know, let you think that that's different, that, you know, everyone has a different situation, everyone has a different dynamic, and that's okay, you know. And I think, you know, starting to be able to show and now take a little bit more of a mentorship opportunity, and a little bit more of a leadership opportunity in terms of me professionally, I feel like that's kind of where I'm going a little bit more. There's this program through ASHA, it's called the STEP program, and I was mentioning to you a little bit earlier, and it's the Students to Empowered program. And it's mostly for students of minority backgrounds and seeking some type of mentorship, whether it's their undergraduate or their graduate programs, and being able to have that one-on-one mentor is so important. Shout out to Ichela. Hey girl, I got you. Congratulations.
Oh yeah, she graduated.
From Oregon, let's see.
Portland State.
Portland State, thank you. Oh my God. And first generation graduate, and
That's so
she,
beautiful.
she rocked it. She's trying to apply to graduate schools, and I'm going to help support her during that process and everything. So, yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
If you could talk to your younger self, what kind of advice or encouragement or explanations would you want to give?
It's a good question. Well, I think what would be really important for me is not to be scared to mess up.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's okay. Yeah, don't be scared of messing up. Like, I feel it. We've talked about this before, like where, as Latinas, we are experiencing, so many different factors, and we feel like we have to go above and beyond, almost like to have this, unrealistic idea of like the perfect SLP, the perfect, it's a screwed level of perfectionism, which is impacted by our adversities growing up, where we've had to, really challenge those stereotypes, really challenge different spaces to even feel like, our presence is valid and our experiences are valid too. And for the longest time, I did not tell people. This is the first time ever that I told people that I was a teen mom, publicly, because I know how much of a stereotype it is. I hear it when professional communities are like, "Oh yeah, she's a teen mom." I'm like, "And like, so what? Like, she is rocking it. She is doing her best. Like, don't dismiss something because of your own bias, And
see that person as an individual.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've all experienced some different type of adversity. Now is the time to really take control of your health and of your self-care, including mental health.
I would definitely tell my younger self that.
Yes,
it's okay to go to therapy.
Yes,
it's fine.
Yes,
it's okay to do yoga.
Oh my God,
it doesn't matter what your body looks like. You don't have to be thin to do yoga.
Absolutely,
you don't have to be flexible.
No,
my younger self could definitely
absolutely
use that.
Yes,
it's okay to take
outside.
It's okay to take 10 minutes for yourself.
Absolutely, like you don't have to go to the end range of like drinking or or whatever in order to just finally feel like you're yourself, or you can break that down.
Yeah,
you can just be present and just that's it. Just be present and that's it. And just if you learn to experience those those sensations, then you can really grow into it. A lot of times, thinking about my younger, maybe 18-year-old self, I had no clue. I was like, yeah, whatever, like I'm just gonna party or like figure it out and like, just kind of have really superficial relationships and friendships. And my 37-year-old self is not about that life anymore. It's like, yeah, no, thank you, but yes to me.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Lucia,
Yeah,
for being our
absolutely.
first interview for SLPs of Color.
You've been amazing.
So amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Too.
Lucia, thank you again so much for having us in your home and introducing us to your family and to your dog. We really appreciate it. You can find us at SLPs of Color on Instagram.
You can find me at Lala Speech Therapy or www.lalaspeech.com.
Thank you again, Lucia. It was great talking with you.
Thank you.
Bye.